There we go.
Where's the beer? Not my time to babysit. Seem to be me. Okay, somebody who's a lot younger than me. How do you? Okay,
Yeah. Okay, look.
well, I've got no
So do you
file.
have any disclaimer?
Yeah, oh, yes, I'm sorry. We began recording the meeting, so just a reminder to everybody watching, those that are joining us here, the meeting being recorded. Typically, in the work session, they're structured to give an opportunity for the council to have more of a free-flowing discussion on topics that will later be on a council agenda. So at the council president's discretion, conversation might be limited just to the council and mayor this evening, just as a forewarning. For security, I just wanted to let you know that if we get interrupted some way, we haven't had that problem in a while, but just in case, if we get interrupted in a way that doesn't allow us to carry on and continue with the meeting, we will end our Zoom call. We'll send out a new link for folks to join, and then we'll pick back up so that we can carry on with our business as regularly scheduled. I also have stopped video for folks that are not actively engaged in conversation, so please don't take any personal offense to it. It's just easier for those that are watching if there are fewer videos and it's limited to those that are engaged in the discussion. And with that, Mr. President, I turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Mr. Mayor. Let's get going. And the first topic for our work session is youth involvement in town. This is an idea that you've been championing for a while, and
You want me to say
you
something?
prompted us to get it going on this agenda. So yes, please.
What I felt was that since we passed the amendment to, you know, have engaged and have our kids vote, that we shouldn't just say, hey, go vote. I thought we should engage them in town governance and to, you know, grow into this. So I had some ideas, but better than my ideas were EJ's ideas.
Yeah.
And so he made my life very easy, and I would love to see us, and maybe we should hash this around some, have a youth council, just what you were suggesting. I read what you presented. I think that's great. You know, I think we can tweak it in some ways, you know, and we need to hash it through, but I'm pretty excited about this, and I think it's the right thing to do to engage teens and make them really part of, you know, what we do, and let them learn and grow and be better adults. How's that? Anybody disagree?
That is a great read. I wouldn't disagree.
Thank you.
Well, let me just put up another idea which could go along with it or be an alternative to it, but the idea is to declare one slot on most of our committees, a youth slot, so that we try to recruit a high school student to each committee. And that way they're participating with senior adults, you know, and discussing with adults on equal terms, which I think is a good thing for them. And they're also immediately engaged in the work of that committee coming to council. Malia Leviton was on the inclusion committee until this year, and she was instrumental over the charter amendment, in fact, to reduce the voting age to 16, and was working through that committee to achieve that. So I see it as another vehicle for youngsters to be able to influence.
Robin, that was exactly where I was going until I read EJ's proposal, but I think that we could fold that in and should. I know my thought was just that I would write to all the committee chairs and ask them, you know, tell them we'd like to put, you know, have a slot for teens. But I just think we should take that idea and hash it through to figure out which way, how to begin to go.
Right. To clarify,
Jeff is talking in the committee.
Yeah,
Oh, as you all know, so I think that both of these ideas are good. You know, as of now, we have the opportunity to put youth on every committee, but I think also having a different council / committee that has the mission of increasing youth participation and in all aspects of government, I think that's what's really needed because that will jumpstart getting youth interested in being on specific committees. But I really like Debbie's idea of augmenting what we already have with a youth council. And part of the youth council's mission could be to recruit youth to be considered for nomination to committees. Thank you.
Credit is due, was EJ's idea.
I also, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, EJ, but when EJ was serving on the youth council in his hometown, he did serve on a recycling committee along with that. And so it could be wrapped up that either, you know, one of the expectations for people that serve on a youth council is that you apply to serve on one of the committees, or at the end of the youth council term, then they do one or the other. I don't know, EJ, if you wanted to speak about your experience and how the two work together.
Yeah, so kind of how it worked for me was basically,
Could you get to a microphone?
Yeah, you might maybe just step up into one of the chairs.
I was like, sit here for a second. What I was saying is that when I did youth city council in my hometown, that gave me an opportunity to work directly with my hometown city council as well as members of staff. And because of that, they invited me to be a youth liaison towards their recycling committee. And so it was kind of both in a way, as I wasn't selected for the committee just because I was on the youth council, but that's what gave me the interactions to be invited to.
Great, thank you for that extra background. I was just going to mention what the mayor had mentioned that youth can serve on any of our committees today. I think the question is, how do we encourage that, facilitate that type of participation? I think it would be valuable for the town, valuable for the younger residents of the town.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that I threw out there, that wasn't registered, is that we declare one slot in each. Almost, I'm not sure about the audit committee, I must confess, but on most of our committees, one slot to be a slot for a high schooler.
Right, oh, I think that's a great idea, but I think back on youth participation in the debate on the vote. And there were like two or less than a handful of youth from the town participating in that debate,
Yeah.
Which is fun. But I think if we just make the slots open and just put an announcement in the town journal, I don't think that will generate the involvement and engagement that we're looking for. And
I agree, totally.
I'm not saying that one is, you know, you have one without the other. I think both can work.
Yeah.
You know, that's fine.
it sounds like we're all in agreement that this is a desirable objective and we want to make it happen. Maybe we can ask
So-
EJ to, yes?
So what I would say is that if you all agree to ask EJ to work with Ron to draft a resolution or a code amendment about a youth council.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yes, please. Thank you.
I do know, resident did raise their hand. I don't-
We don't always, but I have seen no objection to having someone. Yeah, great. Yes, please. Can you, whether,
Amalia, we saw your hand. If you want to unmute yourself, feel free to make a comment for the council.
Okay, yeah, I just want to chime in with a few thoughts that I had. The first was Tacoma Park. So as you may know, they have a lowered voting age too. And they also have a youth council, which I think I sent Matt just now the charter to it. So along the lines of what we were thinking, it's just, I know, maybe good to see what another place did with how they built their youth council. I think they have it more as like a separate entity, a separate council than more like embedded. So I don't know if that's exactly the way we want to go. And then also I think on the equity inclusion committee, who replaced me is actually a middle schooler. So we might want to, I don't know, stretch the age range a little bit and make it more like a training people almost how to like fulfill their civic duty in that sense. And then a third thing I just want to raise is, I mean, I don't want to make this seem like why the kids are doing it, but maybe just as a extra incentive, adding in SSL hours might make some kids more likely to do it.
Yeah, that's great ideas, and thank you for providing the reference information. Yeah. No, I've just had, I think we need to try and make it fun.
Right.
Also. And I think that might be the benefit or a benefit of a youth council. They can work together, then maybe they can also participate in regular committees, but they can have sort of their own forum, and we can discuss ways to make that particular council, that particular committee more fun.
I know that one thing, I know we live right outside of DC, so it's maybe not, you don't get the same kick of visiting DC as if you're living in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, but part of the youth council is also in EJ's hometown that we could maybe consider is that the council provides for at least the seniors to go for, there's a day on the Hill during the National League of Cities. Where they invite youth, so that could be something we can incorporate as well. That might be a fun,
And it's great.
I think there's so many things we can do once we get rolling.
Yeah.
Okay, great discussion. Thank you. Let's move on to the next topic, which is council and neighborhood notifications. Matt, can you provide some info here?
Yeah, I kind of tried to lay out my thinking on this for you. So our code currently contains language about alongside the application, one of the things that need to be submitted is this neighbor notification sheet. And we've sort of talked about it, that it might make more sense to take that on as an internal thing that the staff does to ensure that residents are being properly notified, that we standardize the way they're being notified, and include and make sure that there's not any loss of information, or we're not stemming the flow of information to residents, but just standardizing it to ensure that residents are getting the right information. So I had suggested that the council could consider a code amendment that replaces some of the sections that I referenced before, and replace it with a requirement that notice is delivered to residents by the town in hard copy form, electronic, by email where available, and that it includes kind of the same checklist, a description of the work, copy of the site plan, description of the town's process for taking in the application and a hearing, and residents, how residents can comment on it, the anticipated date of any hearing, contact information for the applicant, and then contact information for the town hall. I thought this was a good first step. I didn't want to get us too far off track, but I also just kind of made a note of maybe a future topic for consideration is if we can clarify exactly what our expectations should be for when something is filed and exactly what that means. Does that mean it's been submitted and 100% signed off by the staff by the 15th? Because that language then could be more clear to applicants as well, because I think the expectation is. If I hurry and get everything in by the 15th, then the staff will review it for a week. We might have questions, we go back and forth, and then they get upset because they feel like. The rug's been pulled out from under them if we say a week later, look, it's not a complete application here, but. For now, it was more just trying to stay on the topic of the actual delivery of notice to neighbors.
Can I go?
Yes.
So. I think that I think with the delivery notice for, coming from the town, I think it's a great idea. And I think that with the 15th deadline, if you don't have the complete application, then you can't really notify the neighbors, right? So, because part of it is like making sure that the neighbors have these site plans and that they have access to them if they want them. So if we're notifying the neighbors, but we're not providing that kind of information, it's kind of a blank notification.
Sometimes it can be really black and white, other times it's a little bit trickier because, for instance, they might not have marked on the site plan. What the distance is from the new, the addition to the side yard.
Yeah,
And it's not that it's changing anything substantive, it's more about making sure the markings are correct for the way that we.
but I think that, it's all due to open access. And so I think that they should be completed by the 15th. So that we can give the open access to the neighbors as well by that time. So that, everyone has a sufficient amount of time to start kind of looking at this. And I think that in addition to that, we should, continue to include what applications will be up for debate on that following month, because it's not just the neighbors that care, because we saw it with the cherry tree. There's a lot of people that care that that cherry tree might be removed. And so they want to know about that before the meeting comes. And sometimes those agendas for the meetings don't come until it's really right before the meeting.
Right.
And it's just not enough time for people to really process this kind of stuff. And for me, I would like to see site plans and stuff by the 15th. So that I can start to look at them, because they're so confusing and I don't have a civil engineer background. And so if I'm looking at them an hour before the meeting, it does me no good because I can't really see any of that. So I just think that everything should be buttoned up and in place by the 15th.
Right.
And we should do that notification that contains, the setbacks and everything in line. And then Doug can do his work and, everyone can kind of work off that.
Yeah, I understand, and that was part of why I wanted to make sure that thought process was part of this, but also that maybe this isn't the end of this conversation, that we should maybe clarify exactly kind of step by step what we want that process and timeline to look like.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought of with that is. How soon do you know whether or not it is a complete application after the 15th? How long does it take to work that out?
Well, I know Doug is here, Doug might be able to answer that question better than I. Doug, did you get that question?
No, I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Yeah, it's just how many days, how long does it take to evaluate an application to know that it's complete? Trying to think about turnaround time here.
That's hard to say depending on what they're submitting. We got an application today, and today was the deadline for the August hearing that I haven't even looked at yet. But if it's a deck or if it's a small addition, and the architect engineer have worked in the town before, it's usually maybe a few day turnaround because the package is pretty much. Excuse me?
Right. How about a worst case, which is, a full house, tear down, complete new home, got some sense of the time in that?
Well, the house at 4515 Cumberland, we've been sitting now for 3 or 4 months, waiting for them to address our comments. So that's the worst case. Usually
Right.
it's less than a week.
Okay.
Well, you know, these people have to submit all of their plans and everything to Montgomery County, so the stuff's done, right? I mean,
And not necessarily, because sometimes they submit to us before the county.
I guess it kind of depends on our new way of how we, you know, it is confusing, you know, how, like what goes first and.
It's clearly beneficial to get the materials ahead of time,
Mhm.
1 week or 2 weeks.
Yeah,
It is beneficial, no doubt. I mean, we get it days before now. We might get it on a Thursday for a Monday meeting,
yeah, yeah,
or a Friday for a Monday meeting.
yeah.
So getting it 1 or 2 weeks is beneficial. It's beneficial to us, but also beneficial to potentially neighbors who are keen on an application. So the question is, what would it take to get to that?
Well,
That's what you should look at, like, what would it really take to get to that timeline? And if 80% of the applications meet it, that's good enough. So there might be anomalies. We don't have to have 100% hit rate, that it's every time, but if it's even 80%, I think that would be better than what we have now.
yeah,
You know.
and it might make sense to, I mean. Some months we might also have multiple that, you know,
There's
that
a
also,
seasonality to it.
so I
That's
think.
fine.
Maybe, you know, we could, Doug and I can then work with applicants to say, hey, if it's a, you know, if it's tear down, we really recommend you submit it by the first of the month, so we have a full 2 weeks so that you. But maybe that doesn't need to be in the code to give us the leeway to say. You know, sometimes it might take 3 weeks, it might take 4 weeks, it might take a month of back and forth and review, that we're not saying. Hey, if you submit something to us on the first of the month, we're guaranteeing we'll finish it in 2 weeks. Because that might also set up on unrealistic expectations sometimes, but. I think I appreciate what you said, and I think that we should, we'll move forward. And from that perspective, we'll move forward in that way, you know, from now on, that. Filed implies complete application. So then that still might be something that Ron could speak to, that we could consider at future meetings. Do we need to, is it worth changing the language in the code where it says, right now it says the mayor shall submit to the town council for its consideration at the next regularly scheduled session, any building permit application which has been filed with the clerk treasurer by the 15th of the month. Prior to such session, if it's worth clarifying, you know, that it needs to be a complete application, essentially. That it's not just a matter of filing it, it's.
I don't see why we wouldn't do that. You know, I remember going for a permit, you know, like 7 or 8 years ago, and it wouldn't be considered if I didn't have certain pieces to it. So I had to hustle my bustle and get it all in, or I was in a month later. It's on me, you know, to do what I need to do, so the council can do its job.
Yeah, there could be instances where people don't understand what's needed. Not that they're
Right.
delinquent, but they just don't get it, it's their first time, it's known to happen.
Right.
And that's what you're saying, you then educate them, you're like, well, these pieces are missing, you've not identified this properly.
Well, that and the with a new construction, for example, it might take a week or 2 weeks. They may have submitted everything that's there on the 15th, but Doug, it takes time for him to actually, so we don't.
then your suggestion, I know Jeffrey has his hand up, but your suggestion to move it to the first. And
Maybe,
drive everything to that is probably worth trying.
and
Seeing if we get better.
and maybe, you know, one way would be if it's a plan that requires a storm, you know, if it's
Yeah.
above that threshold, then you need to do it by the first of the month. If if it's a deck or something,
Yeah,
you submit it by the 15th, we can review it in a day or two.
That's a good idea.
yeah,
Like,
because
if
we
it's-
also have our consultants that we need to, engage them as well.
Right.
So, I mean, I think that if it requires stormwater management, then maybe by the
For
first.
sure, yeah,
Yeah,
but like for an HVAC or
Yeah.
the lower order permits.
Some people might not know that it requires storm management.
But it would
No.
just be any addition greater than 150 feet must
Okay.
be submitted by.
What I think might be worthwhile is to say that anybody who wants a permit. Here's like maybe we do something where we have a video, you make a video. And say, click on the video and we'll explain all of the things you have to do. And then this way you don't have to have all these personal meetings, but you will have some because people will need more help. And then you say at the end of the video, I'm happy to talk to you
Yeah.
and give you more help. But I think that might be a way to go.
You're saying there might be a way to preempt some questions.
Right.
That is, I think that's what you've been trying.
That's,
on
there's, and actually, that's something that EJ and I have talked about, and I think, and I know the mayor's been waiting for a while, but the mayor has also recommended this in the past, that we create a document that is not the
Right,
code,
video.
but,
I like the video idea.
Can it have the tacky music that goes with all that?
yeah, elevator, yeah,
how to
the-
tear down a home.
Are you leaving for answers for your home?
yeah.
All right, Jeffrey.
Your turn.
Okay, first I want to applaud every comment that has been made. Because I agree with all of them and I think they're very thoughtful. First, I want to give some historical perspective and then I want to ask some questions. So when I got on the council in 2002, 21 years ago, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, when I got on the council, the Thursday before the meeting, we would get the agenda. That would mention a building application. And I'm not sure we got the application, but at that time, there was no legal review of the application and there was no staff review. So we would show up on Monday night and we would, after the mayor spent an hour on his report and show and tell, we would start having building applications. And the mayor would present the application with the assistance of a volunteer architect who wasn't experienced it wasn't his field to review such documents, but he was an architect. And it was usually the first time the applicant had ever met the neighbors in person, probably. And then there would be a battle between the neighbors, the council, and the applicant. So we've come a long way. So my first question is, and this is also to Councilor Rovak. I thought that we changed things so that the minute the application was submitted, it was circulated to the council on their electronically. Is that not the case?
No. Like the last
Okay.
one
Well,
that we
that's
just.
one thing.
had.
That's something that we had talked about. But in addition to all these ideas that you have, don't forget, we also want to consider whether we call, once the application is in, that we have a session where the neighbors can meet the applicant and ask a lot of questions. That's one thing that in the past you've wanted to consider. And the other issue you want to address in this discussion is whether you want to change it so that it's the responsibility of the staff to circulate the information and not the applicant. So that's all.
Well, I think that, having Matt kind of send it out on behalf of the builder, like, or, whoever it is, and CC them along with it, with like a blurb that says, you know, for specific questions, please contact the builder. And, you know, or, you know, whoever it is that's doing the plans. So that we encourage neighbor to neighbor communication. If, you know, a neighbor has, you know, a question about something, then the neighbor who wants to, you know, rebuild the house can help answer that. So I think that setting that up on the 15th and before the 15th gives it a little bit more time for neighbors to kind of have that back and forth, and we direct them to the appropriate people to talk on. Then when it comes to the town council meeting, I feel like they will have, everyone will be more versed in what is going on with the situation at hand. So I think that, you know, we should just recommend that along in the process. And then I lost Mayor.
I think he just turned off his video. I think it's still there.
So and maybe this is for Ron Bolt, but are there any issues with,
Okay.
are there any issues with the town staff forwarding the permit application, all of the drawings to the council and the neighbors as soon as it's received, before it's even been reviewed by the town staff? That could inform people asking questions, that could just inform the whole process.
Because
Or,
right,
but maybe that's just not appropriate, I don't know.
but so, because right now, how it stands, you know, you're supposed to go around to your neighbors
I know.
and knock on the doors and show them the plans.
Right.
So the plans should be going, you know, and that might be even before that, you know, Ron or Doug or anyone has a chance to look at them anyway.
Absolutely, so I think it would be okay, I would,
I think they're two different things. I think submitting the staff, sending it to the neighbors instead of the applicant. Makes sense, because I think that's partly, there've been some wrinkles on neighbors communicating with neighbors, right? So I think that's what's on the table here, is the code change. Right, Matt? Changing, staff submitting it. In terms of submitting it to us, I suspect there are some legal implications there, because it's not clear if it will be the hearing. Right, like sending us something that has not yet been defined for a hearing is unclear to me.
well,
Because they're sending it to staff, then they have to decide if it's going to be a hearing. If it's a hearing, then we should get it. If it's not going to be a hearing, that's what I'm wondering.
yeah, absolutely, so that's what I'm curious what Ron has to say. Not to put you on the spot.
No problem. It's probably more of a practical issue than a legal one in my mind. There's nothing wrong with sending the application to council members and residents once it's filed. It is a public record after all, but from the practical standpoint, it might make sense to make sure the application is complete before it's sent out. And I do kind of like Matt's idea of amending section 112-8A to say, before the mayor sends an application to the council, it's complete. So we could say, once it's filed and deemed complete by the mayor and town manager. It seems to me it makes sense to send that to the council and residents once it's complete, because if it's incomplete, then the manager or Doug will notify the applicant of the item that's missing, and that will be submitted. And that may save some administrative burden, because residents, council members may be noticing the same thing and causing a lot of back and forth emails before, or unnecessarily, if it's something that staff can eliminate in advance.
Yeah, I think it should all be complete by the 15th. And then it goes out, you know, and it can go out with all the things or whatever notifications, and people just have to work around that deadline.
Well, I mean, I appreciate having both Tolbert Feathers and Doug's recommendations when I review these documents.
Yeah.
Which means that we have to wait for them to develop the recommendations before we see the plans. But you know, if the rest of you don't feel you need those recommendations before you review the plans, then speak up. But I mean, I see that as part of my review, is what
No,
if they
we're
say.
saying we want them, we just want them to review.
Well,
That's all we're saying, I think, it's just.
I mean, it takes time for them to.
Absolutely.
Right, we just changed the cadence. I mean, you
Yeah,
know,
the timeline changes, everything moves up.
Yeah.
But I mean, 15th. Yeah, I mean, that would be awesome.
Well,
I can achieve that. I would even be comfortable the Monday before the council meeting, because right now it's lands on a weekend for us.
right,
And
right,
we have, so even if we had a work week to slowly chip away at the materials, that would be ideal. But if you can get to 15, that would be awesome. And, you know.
I don't always know that we're gonna be able to have a full review by staff and then a report that summarizes that review available by the
And,
15th.
and with what you said
But-
earlier about, for anything that requires a stormwater management plan, the strong recommendation is to get to you by the first of the month. So as to have a reasonable chance of getting the review next month.
Could we get it at least the Monday before the scheduled council meeting?
Yeah, I guess what I was thinking is the 15th, I could send the application, the site plan, all that to you. It
Okay.
doesn't have the analysis element of it yet. But then I'll make that available as
Alright,
soon as
that's
possible
fine.
and as
Yeah.
early as possible.
That's fine,
too.
so you're
That-
clear, it's a part 1 and part 2 is coming a week
If, you know,
later.
if you want to wait for the staff reports.
Before we
you
dig
know,
in, that's fine. yeah.
That'll
It's
come
just nice
earlier
to
as
know,
well.
like the plan, if you wanna look at it, great, if you don't, who cares?
Then the burden on us is to recognize it's not been analyzed, it may not be complete, or is it complete?
I guess what I was thinking is it'll be complete.
Okay, so we can ask questions.
Doug has gone through and said that you've submitted everything you need to submit to get on the agenda.
Okay. Fine.
But he hasn't done his analysis yet. He hasn't necessarily said. This is, the setbacks are correct, all that.
And is there any implication of us asking questions before analysis is done? Like, would that bias
I was wondering-
analysis?
I think that's a question for Ron.
So under rules of and principles of due process, the council can't deliberate on the application off the record, so council members can't talk to each other. But if council members have factual questions, those can be posed to staff. As long as the answers come from things from the record, then that's okay.
Okay,
If an answer comes from somewhere off the record, then that just needs to be added to the record as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay,
So where are we? All right.
that's it. So I
so
think,
we need, I think, new language. If all of this is going to show up in the code, I think we need new language to review based on. this
Well, I mean, there are
conversation.
two pieces on it. The first piece is that the town will submit materials to neighbors rather than the neighbor trying, or the builder running to the neighbors or the new owner running to the neighbors. And I think that's fine. We should rewrite the code to reflect that. The second piece of it, I think, still needs working out. That's why I was saying, in summarize where we are. I mean, I like the idea of warning people who have a major rebuild or new build that they should get their materials in early in the first of the month is good. And if other council members want to get the materials before the analysis has been done by the arborist and by our engineer, okay, but I don't. I want to see them only when the analysis has been done.
I agree, me too.
I wanna see them before.
yeah, I think I want to see it before, but
That's fine. I think this is a false dichotomy. I think we will get the analysis too a week later. I think what this is doing is giving us some time with the material.
Yeah,
Independent analysis, there's no harm in that. Potentially, as long as it does not impact due process, which sounds like it does not, if we ask factual questions.
That's just 1 minute.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
He has his hand up.
depending on how it works out, and we can also revisit it later, that we say. Yeah, you can look at it, but please refrain from asking us questions until we've been able to do the report or something like that too.
Here's, I'd love to hear from Jeffrey, but just to be 100% clear. If that is something on your mind, if you're concerned that you would be, receiving questions from us. As you're conducting analysis, you may want to tell us that's a concern of yours, because there will be questions. If we get it, you should anticipate someone will ask a question. Like if I get it on the 15th and I happen to have time that day and I happen to look at it, I might dash you some questions. Ron just said, I can ask you factual questions. So is that opening up kind of a level of engagement you're not comfortable with in the process, and we could figure that?
I mean, this also impacts Doug a little bit, but yeah, and Mr. Mayor, maybe if you wanna, jump in before I respond to.
Yeah.
Councilmember.
No, I wanted to follow up on something that Councilmember Heller had addressed that now Councilmember Kumar has touched on. So you respond, then when you're done, I'll add my comment.
My own personal feeling is I would feel more comfortable responding to specific inquests about an application after the staff has had a chance to actually do a substantive review of it, as opposed to trying to answer it in real time as.
Yeah, but the thing is that if we're able to get it earlier, we don't have to bombard Matt with questions. We can just write down like, some thoughts or whatever, because we'll all deliberate it at the council meeting. So the questions that we have can be answered then. I mean, it's just more, for me, it's just more just having time to like look at this stuff instead of like the last second and, trying to like, blow it up on my computer and I can't read it,
I guess I was thinking in the same vein that the purpose of it, the main purpose of it, in my mind, is so that you have forewarning of big picture what's going to be on the agenda. So you get to look at it and say, oh, there's going to be a new house that's, they're tearing it down. It's, it's going to be 2-story, just kind of at a 10,000 foot level. This is what it's going to be. After we've done it, right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because like, there was that one where with the cherry tree that everyone started emailing us and saying like, this is on the agenda, but it was never even on our agenda. And I'm like, is this on the agenda? And it wasn't, and so I mean.
The town journal.
That's why.
The agenda gets published in the town journal. So, not every month I look at that. Some months I don't know,
Right.
and I walk in blind.
Right.
So to speak.
But this wasn't on the agenda, but we kept getting all, and everyone's like, gonna show up to the meeting. I'm like, hey, it's not on the agenda. So
Yes.
it was just a forewarning. So I think that, knowing what's on the agenda about these houses and
Yes.
having the information that we have, like while the neighbors have it, it's just good business practice for everyone involved, just to have a little bit more time.
And yeah, to your point, if sometimes the way the journal falls, I'm submitting it on the 13th. So I'm trying to, I know Doug's been talking to them. They say they're gonna get it in by Friday
Right.
and they don't end up. So I send it to the journal editor and put it on the draft agenda.
Right.
But then at least you have, to be able to say, well, the council didn't receive that. It's an incomplete application, so we're not anticipating this at the next month.
Right.
So, okay, so with the understanding to get it on the 15th, I'm gonna necessarily bombard you with questions. And we will engage with it. Ideally, the council meeting, but potentially before, or after the team review.
Yeah.
The other issue that just came up. It would be nice for the council to know its agenda before it's published in the town journal. I find that. Somewhat comical that we kind of get it as the rest of the town gets.
Right.
It would be nice to see the agenda before it gets published. Is that possible to do? Possible, right? We don't do that right now. We don't forward it to the council saying, this is the agenda that will be published. in the town journal." Is that?
Just forward the
You
draft.
can just forward that draft to us. Okay,
It's just a.
we don't need to change the code or anything. It would be nice to just see that.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
And also, we don't want to necessarily ask a lot of questions on these too, because it's more helpful for us all in a room to be able to ask the questions on the record. And so,
That's good.
because
That's Ron's
we
point,
all
yeah.
learned from each other.
We can send, we can send the proposed agenda as soon as Matt creates it. But a lot changes between when it's submitted to the journal and when it's the final agenda is created the last week. But we can definitely do that. That doesn't need a code change.
Great.
Okay, great discussion.
Ron and.
But I have
And-
another, I
And
have
Doug
some-
actually wanted to say something.
Doug wanted to say something, then I want to say something. Go ahead.
Can I offer a compromise? Typically, what I do is I'll get the plans, and within 3 or 4 days, I'll review the plans, and then I'll send a email to the applicant called, these are the comments from our initial review of the plans. At that point, we can send it to the council with my memo, so they know what's missing, so they're not looking at a plan that might be changing, but they have an idea of where we are. So that's typically what I do now, and it's maybe 4 or 5 days after they submit at the latest.
That's awesome.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, I wanted to ask council members Heller and Kumar if this how-to video that you're going to be starring in, if you would consider adding
That's the
any,
perfect time.
if
Adding
you
what?
would, if you would consider adding any elements of the welcome letter that had been proposed in past years. For example, you know, the great example that Councilmember Rovak brought up about that cherry tree. You could have in your how-to video the part of the philosophy of the town that we like to save trees, and so that before an applicant or their architect designs something, they would take that in consideration. That was one of that was an example of why that welcome letter had been proposed. And I don't know if you're ready to add that to your how-to video. Thank you.
We opened with a picture of George Washington and a cherry tree, just.
There we go.
I don't think we're there yet, but I just put on the table, but I actually didn't think that Kabir and I were doing this. I thought it was Matt.
signed on,
That was
Debbie and
good.
I 100% doing this video.
Video.
This is getting better with time. In my mind, it's getting, I have a perfect eye for it. It's going great.
You see, Ron, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. Listening to the discussion and specifically Councilmember Kumar's question, it occurs to me that I think if the applications are sent out before they're complete, you know, we might be setting up a risk of indirect ex parte. For example, if a council member has a question, well, has the applicant considered this? Have they considered a paver driveway instead of asphalt? And pose that question to the manager or the arborist or the building permit administrator with the expectation that they find out an answer. And we might be creating an avenue for ex parte discussions before the matters actually before the council. But an alternative comes to mind, maybe 15 days to allow processing isn't enough. It strikes me that that's difficult in modern times with how complex applications are. You know, we might say, instead of applications needing to be complete by the 15th, especially for new construction, you know, we could say the first of the month to allow a full month of processing.
I totally agree.
The only practical issue I could see with the first of the month is if we, for instance, continue a hearing, then they're automatically going to be bumped 2 months later.
But I mean, a continuation's me, well, let the lawyer answer.
I mean, I think the continuation will be less likely if we get it a full month early. So there's more time for our council review of it, as well as for the specialist review of it, the engineer and the arborist.
Can you play that out? Why would it push it 2 months?
If we have a meeting on August 7th. And there's a construction hearing and the council says, we don't want to approve this yet because. We feel that you didn't You didn't,
You need to make certain updates to the application.
yeah, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
The next meeting is on September 6th or whatever, so they would need
it's
to,
always a month.
but at least. As of now, they have a week to get in amendments to their application to address council
It's a
concerns.
process. I
But
mean,
yeah, but
it's
see, in the
different,
process,
like-
we could change it's the initial application might have one
Yeah.
timeline. But amendments and updates might have a different timeline, so we don't push them off.
Yeah,
We could do that.
yeah,
You see
Right,
what
I
I
think
mean?
that is a great idea.
yeah.
That sort of gets to my question before though about completed application. What is considered a filed application and complete and
The way I understand it is completed for the hearing. And then when we have a hearing, issues come up.
right,
That doesn't mean it wasn't completed.
right, right.
And at the
Yeah.
hearing, we may say, well, we found these errors or there are certain gaps, so actually, we are really uncomfortable with this cherry tree issue. And then, that becomes part of the council process.
But they also have the right, but before they file it, to come in and talk to you to say, am I complete? And you can look at it and go, no.
After they watch the video, obviously.
After they watch the video,
Yeah.
right. They have to come in here and sit down and watch the video.
Yeah.
But they have the right to go talk to you, to get help. And I think you have to show up with a completed application. You screw up, or you need more,
And it just, I mean, these applications sit with Montgomery County for months on end. It's not like we're, doing this crazy thing to these, to the people. I mean, I think it's just giving everyone enough time to digest the information. It's very important.
Agreed.
So I'm totally for the first of the month.
I like
What, do you want to draw up a process plan?
Sure,
And we do
That'd be
another
useful.
discussion on it, we look at it and kind of deliberate on it and we don't need to rush this.
before a code amendment is,
Yeah, that would be my
okay,
preference, because core amendments, we should be, always careful with those, and it would be good to just get the process laid out, gives you time to follow up with Ron on things that might be on his mind.
okay,
But I mean, I think we separated into two parts again, so that we can go ahead with developing code amendment for the town issuing the materials to the neighbors rather than
Fine,
the owner doing it.
We can do that if it
That's
helps
that.
you.
But the second part of it, yes, we need to have a discussion, yes. Work on a plan based on this discussion, not people.
There are two separate elements, but it's more appropriate somehow to actually make the code change as an integrated proposal. And maybe that would reduce fees for any of these changes, then we could maybe take that step, but we certainly start with.
We can get the
The
language
language.
right too. We may need to
We
keep
start
the
with the
language.
language. Okay.
Ron might have had one last comment.
Yes,
Real
Bob.
quick. To the mayor's point, whether there should be a pre-permit meeting. It strikes me, as the mayor said, historically, I think this neighbor signature sheet was aimed at promoting informal meetings before the council hearing on the permit. The town of Chevy Chase, Martin's Additions do something similar. As the mayor noted, once an application is complete, a pre-permit meeting is scheduled between the builder and any neighbors who want to attend. And that meeting takes place even though the application is complete, but before the permit is issued, just in case any changes are made. So that could be part of your continued discussions as well.
That's useful because for new construction related to stormwater, if I'm not mistaken, we did put in the code a pre-construction meeting.
Yes,
But it's right now exclusively for stormwater related new construction, correct?
yes, and it's with the staff.
So now maybe we can evolve that.
Get into ex parte problems that council's involved.
Yeah, but we could evolve that along the lines of what Ron is saying for all construction. And put it in the code, even though you informally do it, it might be useful to mandate that.
Okay.
Okay. I'm glad we're moving ahead. This is an important area that we can start to resolve some confusion.
So no ordinance at this time. We're just going to continue to discuss.
Yes,
All right, thank you.
but we requested starting to develop the language for the town staff to make notifications.
Well, if I may, it would be good to get something for the next work session. That both lays out a process along the lines of what we discussed.
Right.
And ideally, the code change is necessary to implement. It would be good to get it at the next
Okay.
council meeting, work session.
Next work session, yes.
Does that work, Ron?
Yeah, no
Mr.
problem.
Mayor.
But also, the staff is not prohibited now from circulating the application, so it doesn't have to be in a code change to.
Agreed.
So if you all like the idea, then Matt can implement it,
Yeah.
right? Right, Matt?
Yep.
All right, the next topic. Another ongoing topic here, dear. Pickleball. I don't know if this is more of an update from you. Mr.
We're not-
Chair?
We're not prepared to do that tonight.
Okay. So then,
Remember, Ellen Globacar has offered to present some ideas to continue the discussion of a possibility of a pickleball trial. But we haven't had the opportunity to meet to prepare her presentation. So we'll try to do that in August. Thank you.
that's fine, and thank you for taking the lead with Ellen to, sort of explore opportunities or options here. Okay. The next topic is another building permit question. We have talked about loosely, but not really dug into before building height. And we asked Matt, town staff, to establish what our neighboring jurisdictions do.
Yeah, so and this also dovetails a little bit into the next topic as well. And it is reflected in the table that I made on the next topic, but a few of our neighboring municipalities do have building height, their own building height regulations.
Sorry to interrupt you. Would it be useful to start with the table of the so-called next topic, because that's a universal view?
Yeah,
Is that, I don't know if folks are comfortable, I don't know if you saw that table.
This table here?
No, I mean this table.
Yeah,
Oh,
This is a full list of how we compare with other municipalities across
Ah.
different dimensions, where height is one of them.
yes,
So we could talk about the full list and then double click on the height.
great suggestion.
Yeah.
Okay,
So, yeah, so we're moving on to number 5 in our working session agenda, other building code
sorry to
considerations.
interrupt you.
no, thank you. This is just very high level. Whether there's any code regulation related to the different categories on the left. And so blue means that there's something in the code for it. I didn't delve into what the regulation is specifically. But I wanted to just at a very high level, give you a sense of what does Somerset have in its code compared to our neighboring municipalities? Are there any gaps? And if we identify gaps, then we can do further analysis to say, wow, all of our there is pool regulations. That's something that's come up before. Do we want to look at that? Just as an example.
So the orange means we
Orange
don't
means-
have anything.
Correct. There's nothing in our code related to those.
And in others.
Blue.
Blue plus yes, orange X no.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think we should look at lot coverage, building
Yes.
height.
What
I
is
don't know what
wall
wall
plane?
plane is.
Yeah.
Ron can probably explain this better than I can, but wall plane is related to massing of walls, so. Instead of, it basically breaks up the houses from being boxy. So you might say that a wall after a certain distance needs to slightly jut out or in so that it creates less of a massing presence.
That's
massive
right.
presence.
Horizontally.
Good job.
Wow, that was very good. Very visual.
Yes, gesticulation.
It's like a fighter pilot.
Go ahead, Ron, sorry, we are going off track here.
No, I was just saying, I agree with Matt. Martin's Additions, Chevy Chase View, Chevy Chase Village have this provision that says, a wall plane cannot continue horizontally for more than 35 feet or thereabouts without an offset or projection at least 3 feet deep by 5 feet wide to break up the apparent mass of the continuous wall plane.
We got a lot of those in this day.
Yeah, I think all of these would be, well, a quick reaction. I think if you're saying we can, Ron and Matt, if you're saying we can propose potential language inspired by these other towns, regulations on lot coverage, building height, wall plane, driveways, pools, and projections. Are we comfortable? I mean, it'd be good to look at all of that. I mean, that doesn't mean we're gonna change the code, but it would be good to see what that looks like and have that discussion. I mean, I will be open to that from my end, at least.
And
Just one question on projections,
I was gonna ask that.
because we streamlined that.
I thought we had projections covered in the code that.
Yeah,
Maybe just in not in the way that you're.
I that was that's why I put that last, because I saved it for last because it was a little bit tricky. We do, that kind of tried to reflect more front setback projections that you allow porches, things like that to project into the established building line. And we, as Councilmember Kumar said, we streamlined our code to just make it simpler, so we don't allow for projections into our front setback for.
I liked that change because it simplified things. So
Yeah.
we're not debating what is a lattice window and, is that a projection or, is balcony a
Right.
projection? And
Right.
we don't get into architectural elements that keep changing with modern construction. So
Where would an elevator? Like at the house on Greystone, where would that fall in here?
So
little projection.
hypothetically, I think that would be, if there were an elevator. Going up to, that would relate to building heights, because the county right now measures height only to the peak of the roof. And doesn't count those kind of appurtenance structures on top of a roof as part of its building height.
We could do that.
But we could add the way, it's not just the raw number, but it's also the way that the height is measured. We have the ability to regulate.
Like that.
I have another question here. So one element here is what do we have versus what other towns have, simply in terms of whether that issue is addressed. But are we addressing that issue the same way as other towns? That might be useful to know as well, because that's not
Right.
clear. Now.
Yes,
So,
yes, this
So
is
it's-
very high level. Yeah.
So it's true that we have accessory buildings, similar to a lot of towns, but are we consistent with the rest of these towns or not? Might be useful to know
Okay.
as well.
Yeah,
Is an accessory building like a shed?
a shed or a
Or
detached garage or something like that.
By the way, this is phenomenal, very helpful analysis. Thank you.
I second that. This is great work, and I think it provides a very useful framework or starting point for us to dig into it further. What the council tried to do many years ago when I first joined the council, when there were some issues, I think something like this could help get past that. Is there's a small subgroup of the council, 2 council members who work directly with staff to explore some of these options and develop some, or explore the landscape and develop some options for the council to consider. So it wasn't left wholly on the town staff. Yes, some council members who had some insights or perspectives on how the town deals with regulations, what the issues have been with building permits involved in it too. So as we look at building, I might want to think about that.
This is a very useful table, and I really, reluctant to give you more work, but I want one more column in it, which is what the county does on all these things.
Okay.
And because really the question is, do we want to do something different from what the county is already doing?
Right.
So we should see that.
Yes, and in the building height one, I did include that.
But you didn't put it in.
Because implicitly, if a town doesn't regulate it, it's not that there's no regulations, it's just that it defaults to whatever the Montgomery County regulations.
Right.
Coming to building height. Are we comfortable with moving forward with your recommendation?
Okay, so let's take a look at building height. You want us to walk us through building height now?
Sure, yeah, so building height was one that we had identified previously, I broke out a more detailed comparison to Montgomery County, which is what our regulations are right now, is the Montgomery County regulations. And then a few of our neighboring municipalities. What I recommended as maybe a next step is to see what the impact would be in our town of some of the various options here. So if I worked with Doug, if the staff presented, the next council work session in between 5 and 10, sample size of 5 to 10 to say, if this were our building code, it would have impacted this, by this much, or it would have had this impact on this building, this impact on that application, etc.
That would be great.
Okay.
I think as part of process, would it be possible to also confer with the other, at least one or two of the other towns, what has been the impact in their town? Because they have a longer history.
Sure.
With these codes, if there's any data there that can help us, because, for example, if they are thinking of bringing it back down or increasing it.
Right.
They are having a parallel conversation that's in the other direction, it'd be good to know that.
Okay.
Matt, might you be able to weigh in? Which neighborhood did you work in?
Martin's edition.
Martin's Additions. You could probably talk about what they did.
Or at least
Yeah.
get that information.
Yeah, and Doug and Ron also both still contract with Martin's Editions as
There you
well, so they can help speak to that as well.
Great.
So I think this is great, and it sounds like the council has, there's solid consensus, the council would like to take this further. Before I say anything, yes, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Mr. President, I just wanted to throw in a question / idea that I think I brought up at an earlier work session, and I think maybe Ron answered it. And is it also possible that the town could have different building heights for different streets? So that, perhaps one height is appropriate for one geography, but not another. Is that legal? And is that something the council would be interested in exploring?
So I believe it would be possible, Mr. Mayor. The authority for these regulations is found in section 2509 of the land use article of the Maryland Code, which was added by the legislature in 2006 in response to Manchinization concerns, and the legislative history there reflects that a purpose of the new authority is to preserve community character, among other things, and prevent the looming of structures, etc. And so the communities that have implemented this authority have generally hired an urban planner to study their towns. And in one of those studies, town of Chevy Chase and Chevy Chase View, I believe, the urban planner found what was termed character fabrics in the town. Certain streets, areas of the town had different character than others. So I think if we were to have a similar review there would be a basis for imposing different regulations on different streets, you know, as long as we could point to the fact that there are different areas that have different character that need preserving. You know, a height of 30 feet on this street might be adequate, 35 feet on another, based on what's there existing.
I think that's a can of worms.
Well, thank you. So I think related to that is perhaps in the future, the council wants to consider hiring such person to perform that kind of study before you make final decisions, building height, if that's an idea that you all like.
If you're gonna have varying standards.
Right.
It looks like Martin's Additions has tried to do that with this 33-foot maximum height, but 35-foot maximum is available based on established building height, presumably EVA.
Right. Exactly.
So that's very.
Except, Councilmember Barr, that provides an exception. So it doesn't involve imposition of a stricter height based on EBH. It allows additional height if the EBH is higher than the max, than the minimum restriction, sorry. So they start at 33, but you can have up to 35 if the EBH is higher than the 33.
Thank you, great discussion. My thought here is, or my concern is, I believe we have consensus from the council to really dig into this topic and take some progressive steps. And if we just go down the path of some studies, it could be year plus before anything gets done. So my preference would be for us to move ahead and keep in mind what the mayor and Ron suggested. That could proceed in parallel. We could, a year or two down the road, decide that certain communities need certain protections for their fabric, architectural fabric, but we can get some protections in soon.
Either way, it would be good to take the next step.
Yes.
So take the next step.
Completely
Then
agree with
let's
the
look
next
at that
step.
information. I appreciate what Jeffrey, the mayor is saying, because we are coming into this after stuff has been built in our town. There's, so we may need to sort of keep that in mind. But maybe that's the next step for us, right? It's not like this is blank slate and we are imposing building. There is already a sort of fabric in parts of the neighborhood. Right, does exist. So, but we don't need to get there just yet. I think let's look at this information before we decide. There might be some simple steps we can take.
And I would like to see, yes, agenda item number 5 expanded. Did a great job with the information on the building height in a similar way for those other categories. And that is probably too much to ask for next month's work session.
Okay.
But as part of a vision, and maybe you could recommend a plan of how long you think it'll take you to get that information presented.
That's a good idea for next time.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just sort of.
And lot coverage might be the next.
That's what I
one.
was just gonna say, like,
I was
lot
saying,
coverage.
yeah,
we-
help prioritize which ones we want to take on.
Because
Lot
really,
coverage.
lot coverage would serve a lot of these things, because we have accessory buildings, driveways, pools, like, if we tackle lot coverage, that might be lead into a lot of, things that are already kind of covered there.
And lot coverage is, for the reasons that you said, is also one of there's lots of different ways we can do it too, in terms of front lot coverage, rear lot coverage, total lot coverage, total impervious surface coverage, et cetera, so.
Yeah, right, yeah, so,
And for what it's worth, when we were looking at the stormwater code, I believe DC or a few other areas, there is a lot coverage.
But
There's
I'm not
lots, some areas do it by lot coverage. We got advice from our stormwater folks not to do that here. Partly because we're very irregular lots here, which means that percent lot coverage in a very irregular lot, it's very hard to achieve because of the shape of the lot. Whereas in bigger lots, it's easy to get away with it. That was the point.
But I think there's basis for a meaty discussion. I think
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks. All right. Well done, you've added your word march, good job.
Marching orders.
EJ is gonna get rid of it.
Okay, construction fees.
This was just very quickly, more just a clarification about. Whether this is a topic that you think I should prioritize or think about it more in the rhythm of our budget season. We last updated our fees in 2019. They're probably due for an upgrade, but maybe.
Budget season would be my 2 cents.
Yes, but
Our brains work better.
Okay, great, all right.
And maybe early part of the budget season, just so we can have a bit more time. to
Yes.
discuss it.
We're stretching the budget process anyway.
Yeah, right.
So it'll
I
be-
mean, it's basically all fees. It's not just construction fees, but
Yeah, good point. Yes,
we might want to get yes fees and pull up, pull.
fair point, yeah.
Okay. Great. Non-native invasive plant species, NNIs.
So this is something we discussed a little bit when we introduced the ordinance last month. I went back, talked to Tolbert, I also talked to Kelly O'Clesson, who was the Groundsmith Collective person. If what they recommended, they both agreed that and there was no need to reinvent the wheel here, that using the state of Maryland's Department of Ag list, which has a list of invasive plants. We just have an ordinance to adopt that alongside, adopt a resolution alongside our ordinance, then that probably covers it.
Okay, it sounds good, but I note that Ron has his hand up.
Yeah, so quick question. The Department of Agricultural list has 2 tiers. Tier 1 are the plants that can't be sold, and there's only 6 of them. Tier 2 plants, there are much more. Those plants are allowed to be sold, but have to be sold with a sign warning consumers that they're invasive. So my question would be, are we adopting the entire list as a cannot plant list, or only the tier 1? Because that only has 6 plants again.
My view on that would be we adopt the entire list.
Tier 1 and tier 2.
Tier 1 and tier 2.
But then tier 2 has some pretty common things on it as well, I'd note, like English ivy.
Yes,
I think English ivy is down in the additional plants considered, isn't it? I don't think that's part of tier 2. I wasn't quite sure what additional plants considered meant on this list.
that was the question I had. For example, since we are coming at this spread, we can do tier 1 and tier 2, but should we also look at the 3rd tier? The longer list that's there, are there items that we know already in our town are invasive or potentially invasive that are not covered in tier 1 and tier 2?
There are, yeah.
So then I don't know this stuff, but if people know that, it would be good to hear that. Because I keep hearing, oh, that's invasive. Dudley, for instance, who's been on the PNRC, has often said, I'm going to clear these invasive species. I'm like, okay, what are they exactly?
I only
It's
enforce,
like bamboo, right?
I don't enforce this, right?
So,
Yes.
well, bamboo isn't.
Bamboo's tier 2.
Bamboo is there on the list.
But
English ivy.
But there also is some bamboo that's on the additional plants to be considered. So some bamboo apparently is allowed.
Okay.
Completely allowed.
Arrow bamboo, Bissett bamboo.
So this is great, but I think we need,
No, it's like a bush.
here are some quick thoughts. I think we should do tier 1 and tier 2.
I agree.
But we probably may need more that are in this longer list that correspond to what we know already is considered invasive in our town environment. And I'm not an expert on that.
PNRC
Someone would need to weigh in on that.
PNRC advises on that.
That's what I think.
Maybe they should do some education and have some sort of forum to talk about these plants. Someone like me, I have no idea, except for bamboo.
Yeah, but there are apparently, 200 varieties of bamboo. But there are a lot of varieties of bamboo, frankly.
And one domestic bamboo, actually, so.
One domestic bamboo. So next step then,
So maybe a resolution for adoption alongside the ordinance next month that specifically tier 1 and tier 2 on this list is our starting point, get more data, get PNRC feedback on.
can we get PNRC to weigh in before adoption?
It would
Can
be
we
good to
try
have in a
at least?
recommendation.
I have an idea. The ordinance could say, we are prohibiting the plants shown as tier 1 and tier 2 on the Maryland Department of Agriculture's list, and such other plants as may be listed on a list adopted by the council by resolution from time to time. That way we codify tier 1 and tier 2 and have the flexibility to have our supplemental list by resolution.
I'd be comfortable with that, but it would be good to run it by PNRC anyway.
Yes.
So there are people there that definitely haven't.
Yeah, I mean,
And
right.
are knowledgeable,
Yeah,
like
I
it
mean-
would be, this is the stuff they are knowledgeable.
I don't think it's about necessary. I mean, that is say we should adopt tier 1 and tier 2 and then run it by NRC to see what recommendations come from them about other plans and then.
I like that idea.
But even for this. In general, I like to have committee recommendations for or against whatever we're considering, just so they're formally part of the process.
Right.
I suspect that they will wholeheartedly support adoption of tiers 1 and 2.
Same here.
I'm just like to solicit that input. for-
And actually, in this
For our
instance,
vote.
they do have technical, there are a couple of people that have technical knowledge and will weigh in. It's worth getting that.
They might even have a preliminary additional list like Ron is talking about that they want us. to
Is that
consider.
okay?
That's fine, yeah, I'll reach out to them, if, you know,
You're in
they
touch with
have,
them all the time.
if I have some, you know, it gives them 3 weeks to try to meet and make a
Enough time.
recommendation, so.
Okay,
Over the summer, that could be tricky.
right. That's, okay, what website, social media?
Yeah,
We're
so
moving on.
this is another, EJ has earned his keep this month, so he.
Gonna be asking for salary.
I don't know, we want a monthly rate.
Yeah, right, exactly. No, he's done a lot of really great work. He's kind of taken the lead on getting our website up to date. He took feedback from the communications committee. And we met with them last week. They had some really positive, I think, feedback and things to say
They were
in general on it. I'm happy with the direction that's going. We asked them, originally, I think I have this right, okay. We asked them if they have any kind of last minute feedback, get it to us by mid this week, so we can update it at the end of this week. And, you know, in our announcements, we say, starting Monday, and we're going live with our new website. And then in addition to that, he's done some legwork on getting a Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. off the ground.
I got friended by the Thomas.
All right, there you go.
I didn't either.
You make the video.
I might only be a friend of, so I don't even know,
Just more ways that we can help get information out there. One thing that EJ has been working on with Ron is when we do the social media, we should accompany that with a policy for social media just to ensure that we're able to moderate it.
Agreed.
So he's worked with Ron. Ron has offered some suggestions, mostly
Very good.
based off of Montgomery County's regulations that basically just give us permission to remove posts that are inappropriate or, you know, off topic or advertising things, things of that nature. And then I think the next step, and Ron, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the next step would be also to update our document retention, because currently we don't have anything that reflects social media. So one of the things is that in the policy as written is that we retain the right to delete posts after 30 days. So it shouldn't be a problem, but it should be officially reflected in our document retention policy. So we can update that as a next step.
Makes sense.
Cool. All right. July 24th. July 24th. Mark the calendars.
Which one today?
Yeah, I just want to say that the communications committee was really excited about this. Yeah, they really liked the website. So thank you, EJ.
Can we get a
I'll
review?
I'll send you the link to it as well to double check, make sure, your bio's okay if you want us to update your. Shannon somehow had a new kid.
I called and said, where are you hiding that second child? So
I
we're
don't know where that came
I'm
from.
sure I like wrote something about my dog that you guys were like normal, people were like, oh, she's must be referring to another child.
Yes. But yeah, like I said, if there's anything that you want updated that reflects on you, we can do that before we launch it on Monday. And then the other element of that is just that part of the website is continually keeping it
Yes,
up
it
to
needs to be
date. So, it's a process and it's a never ending process. So.
We were partially joking, but at some point, should we have information up there on the permitting, educating, or I don't know what's up there. But that could be a separate project. Video aside, like just to have, if that guidance is shallow, it might be.
The mayor was not to.
Yeah,
That's a
that's,
good
I
idea.
think might be worth making a project. But
Cool, yeah.
Maybe we
definitely.
should put one of our youth in charge of social media.
There we go.
or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
But certainly,
Let's leave that to.
I think EJ got this.
I think he's got this and he's close to the age where he,
Nice, yeah,
okay?
okay. Thank you all, agenda item number 9, Somerset, PNRC,
So.
PSC after conclusion.
Yep, in essence, they've recommended an information campaign, just on trimming back. Plantings that are growing into the sidewalk, informing residents. The one thing I'll note is that the memo references, an outdated version of the code, so our code doesn't prohibit plantings. The way that they've interpreted it is that you can't have plantings that are within 1 foot of the sidewalk, and that's actually not what our code currently says.
What does it say?
It says that they can't interfere with basically, I'm paraphrasing, but it essentially says that it more generally, it can't interfere with sight lines of pedestrians and vehicles and can't interfere with pedestrians on the sidewalk. So it doesn't give a specific 1 foot by 8 feet, but
Like the corner down here, when you go turn right, it's pretty hard.
on Dorset and.
No, right here on from to turn right onto this part of Cumberland
Oh,
corner.
Is that, I mean, there,
Deal and come little come.
Yeah, that's, you
Yeah,
know,
it's the tree,
you gotta like
yeah.
go around real slowly and hope there's nobody else there.
I feel like the Warwick, like when you come up Warwick and go right on Dorset, it's like that too, like you
yes,
really
that's
have
what I
to
was.
like.
or you should walk on our
right, right.
sidewalks sometime as well. Because there are many places in town where the sidewalks are partially grown over by plants. And that's against town code, even the new code.
I believe that's the motivation of this.
Right, yes, yeah.
But this is not requesting a code change, it's just saying they will, these three, by the way, as far as I know, this is the first time I've received a 3 committee joint proposal.
Yeah.
Is that abnormal?
It is.
That's pretty, I mean, it's commendable. Whoever pulled that off, that's very commendable. But it sounds like it's just an information campaign. Do we need as council to do anything? Yeah.
Well, they do propose something actually.
Right, so, yeah, the safe sidewalk day
Day.
Safe sidewalk, sounds like a great idea.
and agreement that the town will cover the costs of the necessary trimming.
Yeah, I think that the bigger policy issue is if we want to, if the town wants to assume responsibility for cutting back from the sidewalk, especially
If people have not taken it up after the
people
campaign.
haven't done it themselves. So
Well, wait a minute. Doesn't it say, and maybe the town attorney can confirm this, but the reason why this has come up in the past is because there are places in the town where residents have very expensive plantings that touch the sidewalk, that prevent, like two people from passing at the same time. And when complaints have been made and the citizen has been requested to cut it back, they have refused. But I believe, and the town attorney can confirm this, I believe the way our code is now is that we can cut it and then we can also fine them. But I'm not sure we want to do that. There's some incredibly expensive plantings that look beautiful. So can you clarify all that, Mr. Town Attorney?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Mr. Mayor. The code does provide the opportunity to do what's known as a clean and lean. Issue notice to someone that their vegetation is encroaching. If they fail to abate within a certain deadline, the town can remove it and put the cost on their tax bill. Also, you can issue municipal citations, fines, $100 a day. The general approach now, as provided in the code, is that nothing new can be planted in the right of way except low growing plants that are under 12 inches. Existing plants in the right of way are grandfathered as long as they don't interfere with pedestrian or motor vehicle use of the right of way, as the manager noted. So if you had a safe sidewalks day and were undertaking removal of the interfering vegetation, that would just have to be balanced with the current code language. Certain plants are grandfathered unless they're an interference. So rather than removing everything that's within 1 foot, you would just remove what's an interference.
And that's what's tricky, because there are places, the reason why the committee has put forth this recommendation is because there are places in the town where there are very beautiful and expensive plantings that interfere with the traffic on the sidewalk. And so it's unfortunately up to the council to decide on a policy.
Well, I think it's very unusual to get a request from 3 committees. So we should take this with a different level of seriousness. I think that an information campaign designating a safe sidewalk day, which gets people motivated to take care of this themselves, seems like a very sensible approach. And there's no harm in moving on that now. In terms of whether we pay for cutting, I think we would need more data on that. Right, and I think it could be part of our next budget cycle. So, because it would, anyway, the cutting, when will the cutting happen? We would need to, have a clear sense of that. I don't think that can happen anytime, right? Because that could also even severely damage these plants.
Right.
So we would need to find, I think it's in the fall, you can cut in the fall and you can cut before summer sets in, right?
Early spring.
Early spring, so keeping in mind, it could be for early spring.
Or fall.
Yeah,
I mean, just why the 3 committees do it? It's, first of all, it's obviously Parks and Natural Resources because they're concerned with vegetation in town. Equity and inclusion because we have individuals in town who use wheelchairs and they are particularly obstructed by the plants over the sidewalk. But it's also people with strollers. I mean, they're obstructed also by the sidewalks. And what was the third question?
Public safety.
Public safety, yeah, because it's making even drivers blind around corners. So yes, there are multiple issues that affect residents because sidewalks and sometimes roads are obstructed, and yes, the council should move on that. And a safe sidewalks day sounds like a great suggestion.
Right. So my sense is that the council is in full agreement with this proposal, perhaps some of the details about who pays to be worked out at a later date, but we can move ahead with. I presume we will need some sort of a resolution about say sidewalk day, we want to time it appropriately.
And since we asked for the PNRC feedback on the invasive plant lists, maybe I could also ask that, get their feedback on
When,
timing in the
Yes.
calendar when makes
Yes.
the most sense.
yes,
I
Okay,
think in terms of
I-
pay, I think if we jump in there and say we're gonna pay for it, somebody says, well, why should I do it? They're gonna pay for it.
Totally.
I would take that out of there and I would go for the safe sidewalks, get people.
peer pressure.
Peer
So
pressure,
I see the power of that.
raise the
Yeah, that's-
antenna, somebody might not realize it, they might not be thinking about it,
I agree with you.
and then later on, if it doesn't work. Then we have to come back to the table to go, okay, what do we do?
Well, there's like a, on one of, Kumar's pictures, like, there's this bushy thing that's like right next to my house, and I'm like, I had no idea. And I was like, wait, I think that picture is right by my house, and he's like, it is. And-
Is it yours?
Well, I don't know if it's mine.
You better get right on now.
Your second child has been watering.
I don't know if it's mine or Meredith's, but, it's one of ours. But I had no idea that that was considered an obstacle on the side.
accidentally picked that, and take a picture.
I know. I was like, wait a second, that was really familiar. There's my car in the background. But I mean, the point is, I don't think residents know all the time that these plantings are obstructing.
I think 80-90%, vast majority will comply,
Yes,
I suspect.
Right.
and some of the others might comply if they recognize that the town will just do it regardless. So if they want it done by their own professional
That's true.
yard service.
That's true.
Right, we'll use
They might
trees.
do something.
That's something.
We're just-
So information campaign, sidewalk day makes sense, but the kind of build up to who pays how, we've got to iron that out, but maybe they can come back with us and
Yeah.
give some details.
Okay,
All right.
cool.
Well, remember, this is good, unless this is very comprehensively communicated, it could lead to a lot of misunderstanding and conflict. Because right now, as the town attorney pointed out, we do have the power to cut, charge, and fine them. So it's not really a cost to the town because we would cut the foliage and we would charge them. So it has something to do with that. We have the power to do that. We just want to make sure that the council has the blessing for the staff to do all this. But I do think before those drastic measures take place, that we start this, just like Councilmember Kumar is talking about, that we start this comprehensive campaign and we widely publicize it. And yes, peer pressure will result in at least 90% of the residents to comply. But it's that 10% is where the town staff will have the most problems with. Thank you.
Okay. All right, September council day.
Labor Day problem with that.
Well, it sort of occurred to me as I was looking at the calendar and the rest of the summer, that. Thinking about how we handle July as well, Labor Day is always the first Monday in September. So at first we talked about when we looked at the calendar, we had bumped it to Tuesday. It's just a question of, do you feel comfortable with it on Tuesday? Would it make more sense to move it to the next Monday so that we're not preparing for it over Labor Day weekend if council members, residents are traveling over that time?
Actually, that's a good idea. For me.
I was just thinking,
Sure.
So what's the date? July 11th?
From 5th to the 11th.
I mean, September 11th.
September.
Yeah, my calendar is showing a communications committee meeting on the 11th from 5 to 6:30 and full committee meeting from 7:30.
I think they usually do have standing meetings on the second Monday of the month.
Yeah.
So, you know what, the pool committee, I'm sure he's fine to, he'll move it. Communications committee, they're pretty hardcore. It's 5 o'clock, it's 5
All right,
day.
no problem.
I've been
Council
notified
meetings at
from one
7.
meeting to the other.
All right.
We can ask though.
Long as you're
Very-
aware,
I
okay.
love the communications committee. I think it's a great committee.
Before we adjourn, I have one item, quick item. As you know, the pool construction is going to begin. And Shannon and I have been part of the Dolphins going to different meets, and we were at one of the pools that just completed construction. And it turns out they had a group that oversaw the construction project. So there was one council member, a town manager, maybe the council liaison for them. I'm forgetting which pool this was. I want to say seven.
Lives.
And so I just want to put that out there that it might be wise to have an construction oversight group that meets regularly, meets with Matt, meets with the construction, what is it? American Pool, Rob, and just there's a common checklist that just the idea that there's a group overseeing it made a big difference, it turns out, in the timely completion of the project. So just wanted to table that. I think it would make sense that it's the council liaison, it's the pool committee chair, it's the town manager. That would be an ideal construct for this, but it's up to you.
I'd like to
guys.
talk to the other side of that. And I think,
Okay.
I understand why that might have been a good idea,
Yeah,
but it's too many hands in the pot.
okay,
And I really like the idea that our town manager handles this. Should he confer with us?
okay.
Yes. Should he bring us concerns or questions? Should we be, and keep us abreast of it? But I think to add more people into the mix is just gonna make it harder for him to do his job.
What do you think, Matt?
Okay, can I say, so when the town hall reconstruction project was going on, we decided that there would be two council members. We felt it was important to be council members and not anybody else. So I would suggest that we use that same model for the pool reconstruction, so that perhaps two council members could be advising Matt and whoever else with these day-to-day stuff. I think that worked very well. Barbara Zoighauser and Franny Peel. I think that Matt came in on the end of that, but didn't that model work very well?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that. I mean, in a big city, you would have, the public works department kind of helping to oversee it as well. Instead of, just the city manager doing it. So I'm happy
Yeah.
to.
So I think to
Other
elected.
people's.
Yeah.
I agree, we don't want to turn it into the entire
many-
council meeting every
Yeah.
week about it, or. The pool
Right.
committee meeting with them every week, but.
Right, no, it's not a pool committee issue. That's for the policy for how the pool goes. So I think that, and the reason why we had two council members, because it wasn't a quorum. So
Okay,
I
yeah,
think
more
if
than two.
two council members want to follow the same role that council members Zoighauser and Peel
I think that
follow,
makes sense.
then we'll
It's
rename,
a better
and then
idea.
we'll rename the pool after whichever two want to do that.
Right.
Well, first let's get the video shot, and
Video first.
are you
Be a wonderful
I'm fine.
next video.
but are you comfortable serving on that two?
Yes, I am.
That would be my
Wow.
suggestion. Is there anyone, if anyone else is not interested, I'm also comfortable, but I'm open to anyone else being it, but we do need an oversight
Okay,
group.
I'm cool.
I'm fine with,
I'm fine with the two, of you, but before we agree on that, I just want to discuss it just a little bit.
Go ahead.
Because I thought your point was well taken about
Too many cooks.
a lot of folks involved, and the mayor is absolutely correct about what happened in the past and how that was useful to have Barbara and Franny involved. Our town staff was different then. And without making any aspersions from the past, I think that we have more people in town staff, we have a more capable and more professional staff. I think we might have the resource, and like, if 7 Oaks in comparison, that's not a municipality.
I don't know all the details. All I heard from them was that it helped them and made a difference. But just to, add to that, I think it would be only to help you. Matt,
Right.
I mean, not to oversee you.
Right.
Yeah, it's just to be facilitated, and I think it's a complicated, it's a big deal for our town. It probably has some value, according to mayor's sensibility here, to have at least 2 council members involved.
Or, I mean, it could be just let Matt try managing it himself with them, and then if you see that in fact it gets to be a little bit complicated and you want more people involved in the decision, then come back to us and say, I want that plan. So it's just let it work out that way. There were very detailed plans for the construction, which, they are presumably going to follow, and that's the oversight that's needed there, as well as obviously the speed with which they're working. But again, there could be complicated decisions, and you.
Cool. That's it. So the big question is going to be change orders. If they find something that's not anticipated, and we have to understand what it is.
Yeah,
We have to understand how fast it's made, what the additional dollar cost is, et cetera.
You know what, I think it makes sense to be in an advisory capacity, but I don't want Matt to have to come and check in with the 2 of us and go, hey,
Agreed,
is this okay?
agreed.
We should be advisory, and you bring us in when you keep us abreast. what's
Well,
going on.
that's all Franny and Barbara were. They
Yeah,
didn't,
that's what
I didn't realize.
And if there is anything budgetary, we have to bring it into the council.
Absolutely.
Like, so we can't.
But I don't want to be I don't want this to be a burden, which is gonna be, something's gonna be a very big project. And, as Steve said, we have a different, it's different now. He has EJ,
Yes.
he's not working alone.
No,
and,
my intention was the exact opposite, shared burden rather than be a burden.
Okay, so I think this is a great discussion. My recommendation is that we empower or authorize Matt to reach out and engage the 2 of you as appropriate, as necessary, as, whenever there are certain site visits or checks that might be of interest to you, he can invite you. And if there are questions that need to be addressed, he can ask you to participate in the discussions with the contractor and get your inputs.
That works for me.
I just wanted to be clear that Matt is the guy who talks to the contractor.
Well,
We do not,
that has to be.
we do not go there.
We can use the Barbara friend.
Right.
Okay.
okay, let me make it very clear. I think that Barbara and Franny very nicely shied away from micromanaging the project. They were just sort of the eyes and ears of the council. And then for example, with change orders that you're talking about, they would get the information about the change order and provide it to the rest of the council in advance of the meeting. So they just sort of took the lead on on council oversight of the project. That's all.
Okay.
And
So
It
are
wasn't-
we-
it
are you
wasn't
comfortable?
micromanaging.
Okay.
And as I recall, we invited Lou Baldemus to come to the council meetings and kind of give a monthly
We
update
should
to say,
yes.
this is what's been going on. He would explain to the council in more detail if there were detailed questions about a change order,
Perfect.
So I think
Thank you.
Do we know if they've gotten that plumbing permit?
I don't believe they have yet.
Okay.
I think we've done that.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised.
All right,
All right,
that's it. Thank you all very much. We're got to 10 minutes early. Any last questions? Comments?
well done.
Have a great day.
Yay.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Enjoy the rest of your trip out west.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Happy
have fun.
trails, everybody. See you.
And happy belated birthday again.
Oh, happy.
When was birthday?
Yesterday.
Oh, happy birthday.
What do you
Hey.
want?
Do we sing? Do we sing?
I think
Everyone ready?
Linda's got something cooking on that.
All right.
Literally.
All right.
Be in your video.
Happy birthday.
It
Happy
it
birthday,
can be in
Jeffrey.
your, it can be in your video.
Yeah,
Can't wait.
we'll shoot a video. We'll shoot a video. All right.